Previously on the silent Disruptor. A routine security audit found a shadow map. Someone had spent 14 months quietly cross-referencing Echo's anonymous node data with Rayall Street addresses. The trail led to Marcus Sterling, and to a federal body nobody at Echo had heard of, the Directorate for Market Continuity, run by a woman named Helena Cade who arrived with a business card instead of a subpoena. Then Cade said one sentence in a parking garage that changed everything: "You were flagged before Echo had a name." That night, an anonymous source inside the Directorate sent Jonah a single scan page. His name on a classified file, dated years before he had ever written a line of code. Jonah built Echo to answer a question about fairness. Now he has a new question, and it's a much older one. How long, exactly, had someone been watching him, and why? There is a file with Jonah Vance's name on it dated the same year he turned 14, the same year he opened a folder on a school laptop and called it, simply, The Signal. He built nothing that year except a habit of reading data nobody asked him to read. Somebody flagged that habit before it ever became a company. This is the episode where Jonah stops asking what the government wants from Echo, and starts asking what it wanted from him before Echo existed at all. Jonah brings the redacted file to Nia and Arthur. The date lines up exactly with the creation of his old Signal research folder, years before Nia, Derek, or Echo itself existed. Jonah laid the printed page on the conference table and let the date sit there before he said anything. "Look at it," he told Nia and Arthur. "That's not the year I met either of you. That's the year I made a folder on a school laptop nobody but me ever opened." Nia checked the timestamp against her own memory of when they'd met, twice, hoping to find a mistake. There wasn't one. Someone had flagged a 14-year-old for reading public order execution data in a public library, years before that reading turned into anything resembling a threat to anyone. The narration reconstructs, from the outside, what a 14-year-old Jonah's research habits would have looked like to an automated flagging system watching public data access patterns. Here is what nobody in that basement ever considered. Somewhere, a system exists whose entire purpose is noticing patterns of behavior that precede large-scale market disruption, the exact kind of behavior a teenager downloading and cross-referencing years of public order execution data, alone, methodically, for months, would produce on a graph. Jonah wasn't hiding anything. He was doing exactly what any curious analyst would do. He simply didn't know a machine somewhere was already scoring how much that curiosity resembled the early behavior of people who go on to build things institutions can't control. Arthur begins quietly digging through his own decades-old regulatory archive, searching for the exact profiling framework he half-admitted to helping write. Arthur hadn't opened his old regulatory boxes in 11 years. He opened 4 of them that afternoon, looking for a memo he remembered drafting in his 30s about early indicators of systemically disruptive market behavior, a phrase he'd chosen himself, carefully, to describe organized fraud rings, never individuals. He didn't find the memo. He found something worse, a follow-up document, 3 years later, requesting the framework be extended to individual behavioral profiles, pilot basis. His own name was on the distribution list. He had never read that version. Layla cross-references Arthur's decades-old memo against modern procurement filings and finds the pilot program's current designation, buried inside the same contract that funds Sterling's analytics work. Layla had the memo's original program name, a bland internal designation Arthur had given her, half out of guilt, half out of fear. It took her 2 days to trace that name through 3 agency reorganizations to its current form, still active, still funded, tucked inside the same contract vehicle she'd already found linking Sterling Capital's data analytics arm to the Directorate for Market Continuity. Different name. Same mandate. 30 years of continuous operation, watching for people who might build something regulators couldn't reach. Agent Thomas Reyes, a mid-level analyst inside the Directorate uneasy about the program's scope, contacts Layla anonymously, then agrees to meet her in person. Thomas Reyes had spent 6 years running behavioral scoring queries he was told protected markets from coordinated fraud. He hadn't slept properly since he'd been assigned, quietly, to rerun an old profile against a name that was now attached to a public company with 60 employees and a mother in Ohio. He met Layla with his phone left at home and a manila folder he wouldn't let out of his hands until she promised, twice, not to name him yet. "I don't think this is about fraud anymore," he told her. "I think it's about who gets to build things the market can't undo." Reyes shows Layla only a fraction of the file, enough to confirm the program's scope but withholding the parts that would identify other subjects and endanger himself further. He let her see 3 pages, no more. Enough to confirm the pilot program had, over 3 decades, profiled several hundred individuals who showed early patterns of what the file called structural disruption potential. People who built things, organized things, coded things that made existing institutions harder to control. Most were never contacted. Most never knew. Jonah Vance was one of maybe a dozen, Reyes said, whose profile had been quietly reactivated the moment Echo crossed a certain user threshold. "Somebody upgraded your file," Reyes said, "the same month you became impossible to ignore." Layla calls Jonah with what she can share. Jonah must sit with the knowledge that his growth, his success, is precisely what reactivated a surveillance file that predated his company. Layla couldn't give him the pages yet, she'd promised Reyes time to disappear from view first. But she gave him the shape of it. He'd been a name in a drawer for 6 years, forgotten, until Echo grew large enough to matter, at which point somebody had pulled his file back out and dusted it off. Jonah sat with his phone against his ear for a long time after she stopped talking. So the thing I built to help people, he finally said, is the thing that made them start watching me again. Nobody on the call had an answer that made that easier to hear. Within 48 hours of meeting Layla, Thomas Reyes is abruptly reassigned to a field office with no explanation, a quiet, procedural act of silencing. The email came at 6 a.m., copied to nobody Reyes recognized. Immediate reassignment, effective that day, to a regional office 900 miles from Washington. No performance issue was cited. None needed to be. Reyes understood the message precisely because it hadn't been dressed up as one. Someone had noticed the coffee shop, or noticed something close enough to it, and had decided a transfer was cleaner than a conversation. He texted Layla 4 words before packing a box. They know. Going dark. Layla confronts director Cade directly. Cade neither confirms nor denies the pilot program by name, offering only a carefully bounded non-denial. Layla asked her the question directly, in a public lobby, recorder visible on the table between them. Cade didn't blink. I can't confirm the existence of any program by the name you've described, she said, because that isn't its name and hasn't been for a decade. It was, Layla realized only after replaying the recording twice, the closest thing to a confirmation Cade was ever going to give her, an admission wrapped so precisely in its own denial that it would never quote cleanly in print. Arthur tells Jonah and Nia he intends to go on record about the original memo bearing his name, even though it will end whatever remains of his standing with his old institution. Arthur had spent 30 years being careful, and he was tired of it. He told Jonah and Nia he planned to confirm, on the record, that he had helped write the original 1990s framework and had never signed off on its expansion to individuals. It will cost me what's left of my reputation with people I used to call colleagues, he said. I've spent that reputation more carefully than I've spent anything else in my life. I'd rather spend all of it on this. Nia, who rarely got emotional in meetings, had to look away from him for a moment. Marcus Sterling, watching the story threaten to surface, realizes his data contract could expose him to more scrutiny than any lawsuit ever did, and starts covering his own tracks. Marcus Sterling had survived a public trial without losing a single client. He understood, watching Layla's byline start circling closer to his contract, that a classified surveillance scandal was a different animal entirely, the kind that ended careers quietly and permanently, with no verdict to appeal. He told his general counsel to begin, discreetly, terminating the analytics contract before anyone outside asked to see it. For the first time in 18 months, Marcus Sterling was the one trying to make something disappear. Rather than wait for the full story to break through Layla, Jonah tells Echo's own employees about the file himself, keeping the company's founding promise of transparency intact even at personal cost. He could have waited for Layla's article and let it explain everything for him. Instead, he stood in front of 60 people again and told them himself. There was a file with his name on it, years older than the company, and he didn't yet know everything it meant. I built this place so nobody here would ever have to find out something important about their own situation from a stranger, he said. I'm not going to be the first person who breaks that rule for you. It cost him something to say out loud. He said it anyway. Layla runs the story without naming Reyes, confirming the decades-old profiling framework's existence and its reactivation tied to Echo's growth, sourced through Arthur's on-record confirmation. Layla's headline ran without a single word about her source in Washington. He was flagged at 14. He didn't build anything yet. She confirmed the framework's origin through Arthur Pembroke's on-record account and its continued operation through the procurement trail she'd already built. She left out everything that could be traced back to a man now living out of a moving box 900 miles from where he used to work. The article ran in 400 outlets by lunchtime. Somewhere, a retired schoolteacher in Dayton finally understood why 2 strangers had once stood on her porch. The directorate issues a carefully worded public statement neither confirming nor denying the specific claims, while quietly opening an internal review clearly aimed at finding the leak source. The directorate's public statement ran 2 sentences. It did not comment on operational matters, and it took all allegations regarding its personnel and programs with the seriousness the American public deserves. Inside the building, a very different memo circulated within the hour, authorizing an internal review focused specifically on recent contact between directorate personnel and members of the press. Thomas Reyes, 900 miles away, read both documents on his phone in a motel parking lot and started packing again. Director Cade returns to Echo, no longer pretending the relationship is friendly, and formally invokes emergency authority to compel deeper cooperation, reframing the entire conflict. She came back without the business card this time, and without the patience. The story you helped surface is true, in its broad strokes, and I'm not going to insult either of us by pretending otherwise, Cade said. What I'm going to tell you is that none of it changes what my office needs from yours. There is a classified national resilience framework, and as of this morning, Echo has been formally designated a critical private infrastructure provider under it. That isn't a request, Mr. Vance. That's a status. And status comes with obligations. Alone with Nia after Cade leaves, Jonah reads the fine print. Echo has 30 days to comply or lose its ability to operate legally across state lines, a deadline engineered to force capitulation before anyone can organize resistance. The designation gave them 30 days to comply with a cooperation framework neither of them had been allowed to see in full yet, or lose the interstate operating status that let Echo function at all. Nia read the deadline twice and said what they were both thinking. They didn't come back because of the story, she said. They came back because the story forced their hand before they were ready, and now they need this done fast, while everyone's still confused about what just happened. Jonah looked at the calendar on his phone and started counting days he hadn't expected to be counting. 30 days. That's what a season of quiet watching becomes once it's finally seen in daylight. Not an apology, and not a retreat, but a deadline. Echo had spent 3 years building something no single company could own and no single server could kill. It had never had to survive a clock that started the moment its enemies got caught. Next time, on the Silent Disruptor, the 30-day countdown forces Jonah into a role he never wanted, the public face of a fight he can no longer keep private.